Our water connection acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia and their connection to country, sky, water, and community. We extend our respect to the traditional custodians of the place where you are listening. This episode is recorded in Ghana country and Ku-ring-gai country. How has the water sector grown in its ability to keep our drinking water safe? What can Cryptosporidium teach us about the science behind clean water? How is innovation helping us manage even the smallest risks in our water systems? Today, we're unpacking what Cryptosporidium is and how innovation is helping us manage it. My name is Jess Borges. I'm on a mission to increase your water curiosity, and this is our Water Connection. Welcome to this new episode. Today's episode is about crypto. But no, we're not talking about Bitcoin. Today, cryptos is much smaller, but it can cause much bigger problems if it gets into our water. To learn all about Cryptosporidium, and I'm going to say crypto from now on, we're joined today by Yulia Shutova, Dr. Yulia Shutova. Yulia is an engineer and researcher with over 20 years' experience in water quality management and water treatment. She specializes in the development and implementation of strategic water quality related programs of work, water quality and public health risk assessments, integrated treatment planning, asset management and optimization, design, treatment processes optimization, and many, many other areas within the water sector, both here in Australia and globally. She has been in the AWA Water Quality Committee Chair and Co-Chair over the last 6 years and is currently a member of the Management Committee for the IWA Disinfection Specialist Group. Welcome to Water Connection, Yulia.
Thank you, Jess. Nice talking to you.
No, amazing. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with the basics. What is crypto or Cryptosporidium?
Yeah, well, it's fine to call it crypto. So, it's completely fine. I think, well, generally when we look at water quality, we acknowledge that nothing is sterilized in the world, in the water. So we might have some pathogens or microorganisms in the water. And generally we can categorize them in a few categories. We can look at bacteria, viruses, protozoa. There could be some fungi, for example, as well. So Cryptosporidium or crypto is a pathogens that can be grouped under protozoa category. So it's also like commonly used as an indicator of protozoa load in the source water or if there's any detection in drinking water plus treatment. So it's a pathogen, it is a parasite, so it might cause some health issues. So it's one of the organisms that cannot live without a host.
Oh.
So it needs a host to live and go through the full life cycle and to reproduce itself. And one of the challenges associated with protozoa and Cryptosporidium in particular is that it's almost like impossible to kill it with chlorine. So we need to think about different treatment methods when we deal with it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a wonderful explanation. And where does crypto typically come from? So how does it get into, well, not the water systems, but the raw water systems that we use before we treat them?
Yeah, like I said, crypto needs a host to live. So again, like when we look at the water quality and pathogens, we would be worried about something that can make people sick. And so it's a type of Cryptosporidium that can be infection for human. There are generally like two types that are infectious. So one is kind of a Cryptosporidium type that only can be infecting the human as a person. And there is another types that can infect humans and some livestock, so cows or sheep. And there's some a very few wild animals that can also like have Cryptosporidium, get sick from crypto as well. So the sources of the pollutions are usually the humans itself. Like you would have a point source of like a sewage treatment plants or septic systems in the catchment. So it's something that is not managed properly, like some untreated sewer or partially treated sewer can get into the source water with a runoff or as a point source contamination. Or it's something that will come from a livestock. So, grazing cows in the catchment, feeding facilities, milk farms, etc. So the most common sources of crypto that
Yeah, okay.
are.
No, it's very interesting. And it makes sense, like if it goes through human or like livestock, and then we have a catchment that is
Yeah.
interacting with another one, which is the source for another population group or
Yeah.
whatever, then that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also one more is I think another source of the pollution could be the recreational activities on the source water itself. So if like having like cows or sheep in a catchment, or people living in the catchment is one source of the pollution, but having recreation on the water itself can be also a source if there are people who might be sick at the
Yeah,
time
okay.
and initiate some ulcers as well. So that could be another consideration.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but like, how do we normally treat crypto? Because you said it was a bit difficult to remove through kind of the standard water disinfection methods or chlorine that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So it's a relatively small organism, and to remove it with chlorine, you need to provide a very, very extremely long contact time. So it's never recommended. Like it's just not achievable, not practical, not physically possible, theoretically possible, I guess. So what we use is a physical removal with various like filtration. Although it's a very small particle, kind of we can treat them as a particles in the water. Like genuine, like normal media filters, it's not like they're not designed for that kind of small particles, but they still can be effective in removing Cryptosporidium, especially if they get caught in the flock, if we apply coagulation process. So it's very well known in industry. So if gravity filters, media filters are operated appropriately with continuous flows, with continuous turbidity measurements, under certain conditions designed well, accurated well, they can effectively remove Cryptosporidium.
Yeah.
Membrane filters is another option. So membrane filtration will be quite effective removing Cryptosporidium, and usually membrane providers, they will also provide information on expected lock reduction values for crypto or other pathogens. Yeah, so another common and effective technique is UV disinfection.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if there are known high loads of Cryptosporidium in the source water, or a high risk of having high loads of Cryptosporidium in source water, we would recommend to install UV systems for specifically like targeting Cryptosporidium
Yeah.
activation, and they're
Yeah.
quite
Okay.
effective.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's very interesting because it looks like some of the processes that we all commonly have, some of the flocculation and coagulation would work, are like if they're like well operated and well designed, which is very interesting because it's not only about what you design, but definitely how you operate it to be able to have it working. So yeah,
Wow.
in this sense that also how we operate the systems is so important. Like I was curious, how far has the water sector come in managing these risks over the last few decades? Because I mean, some of these processes have been around for a long time. It's how we treat water, but how far have we come in really treating this, of managing this risk?
Yeah, so I think like water industry is quite conservative but constantly evolving industry. So with any new evidence around public health or illnesses or like waterborne diseases or chemicals, water industry continuously adjusts to like new requirements and new knowledge, and we do see changes in regulation. So if we look at even like Sydney example, like in the past when one of the biggest dams in Greater Sydney region, Lavargamba Dam, was built, initially water could be supplied from the dam, unfiltered, maybe chlorinated straight to the network. But then as more we learn about the systems, the catchment protection, the water quality, we saw that, as we as an industry, that we need to have a bit tighter guidelines around the water quality. So I think therefore, like we've seen the filtration plant being built. They've been built to certain design specifications. So then we move to a tighter product specification for drinking water quality. Like again, we can take example of turbidity. They got quite
Yeah.
much tighter because of the Cryptosporidium, and they're getting tighter and tighter. This was the most recent changes as well. So what we saw, it's about like almost 2 years ago now, we've seen the changes in Australian drinking water guidelines around introduction of health-based targets. So what it means is that Health-based target setups kind of an acceptable level of risk for pathogens in the water that we supply for drinking. So when it's this target been set up, what industry needed to do, and we're still going through the process, is to assess what's our source water risk case, how we can align our source water with different category of the source water. It's a source water assessment. So it's
Yeah.
like it goes from a very well protected catchment, the water is protected, very low risk of pathogens, the best water in the world, to like some risk of contamination, definitely something present in the water,
Yeah.
challenging water to treat. The water is not suitable for supply,
Don't
pretty
touch it.
much.
Yes.
So it's too much. Yes. So first we'll look at, I guess I'm trying to simplify, but definitely read Australian drinking water guidelines. It's a better reference. So we'll look at the source, what's in the water. Then we'll look at, different categories of source water have different requirements around log reduction values for different pathogens. So it's for all three categories that I mentioned. So bacteria, viruses, and protozoa. And Cryptosporidium will fall under category of protozoa. Then we will look what treatment we have, what treatment barriers we have. Because around Australia, some local utilities or bigger utilities only do chlorination. So some have direct filtration, coagulation direct filtration, some have sedimentation in place, some have UV systems. So depends what treatment train we have for drinking water, like we can see what log reduction we can claim from that process. And then we see if we're matching. So that's been quite new, I think. We definitely identify some gaps in some systems using this approach. So there will be some improvements suggested for the systems. But again, it's a risk-based kind of process. So again, AWG looks all the way through catchment to customer pretty much. So we're looking at the source protection, adequate treatment, and protection of water downstream. So we're also looking, even if treated water leaving the treatment plant, to AWG, Australian Drinking Water Guidelines specification, we still need to ensure that we don't have any contamination in the network. It's an closed system. There's no holes in the reservoirs.
Yeah.
So we don't have like possum swimming there.
Yeah. Nothing going in.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
like
Yes.
so that can provide like a secondary contamination.
Yeah.
Plus
No, but
treatments.
that's a great summary, because it's not only the technology that we have at the water treatment plants, but what do we do before, what do we do after, and how the regulation is constantly changing, of course, I guess to respond to also knowing more. I would imagine like some of these dams and these systems would have been there for decades and decades before we even knew this existed and was a problem. So it is always the challenge of getting our systems who are already built to be up to scratch for these kind of new
Mhm.
and updated regulations. So, and also changes in water use as well. Like I know some of the reservoirs here in South Australia have been open to the public. So I think now I'm connecting some dots, because they are doing some upgrades in some water treatment plants. So that makes sense that we now need it, and it's part of the process. You want to open the reservoirs, that's great for a population, but that means that we just have to strengthen our treatment
Yeah.
processes as well. Yeah.
It's definitely always a challenge, and from the public health protection point of view, you really want to have a closed system, highly protected catchment. But some areas in Australia, like people don't have access to any other lakes or rivers, and it's definitely like people are very well connected to water. Like I can't live without water. I need to have a river or lake or something, or like the ocean nearby. So I, I think again, as industry, we totally understand the desire to have recreational activities in the water, to have access to water bodies, but it comes unfortunately with some costs around providing extra protection again for public health reasons. So I think, it's kind of the situation where we're at the moment, and I
Yeah, I
think
think it's a
I'm going through
trade-off.
that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's a trade-off. And if we take people a little bit more on the journey of like, well, this is why it was closed, and if we want to open it, this is what we need to do. And this is all the stuff that are happening that people might not be that aware. That connects with one of the questions I had here. That is, how can we build like trust in water safety when dealing with invisible threats? Like maybe some people have heard that there's a thing called protozoa, like, I don't know. Not no one in my circle of friends, can I say? But we're really kind of transmitting a lot of these, because by hearing you, I can see there's a lot of regulation and there's a lot of stuff that we do
Mm.
around it. So is it a matter of communicating better? Or what do you think we could do to build a bit more trust in the community?
I think that's really difficult questions, though. Like any technical question you ask me, it would be so much easier to answer. I think community engagement, communication with public, like it's always an interesting subject for discussions for water quality specialists. So I don't know if I have like a good answer, but I think my first question back to you would be, why don't we have a trust, right? So what went wrong?
That's true.
I think generally in Australia, again, people have a trust in drinking water supply systems, in the utilities, in engineering advice, and and our knowledge and the way we manage drinking water systems, like again, catchment to customer. I think where we have a lower trust is the points where we had more incidents. And incidents not always linked to pathogens as such. Sometimes it's the taste of water or color in the water, or like there could be elevated manganese or like too much jasmine. And so, or like, these pipelines are breaking all the time. So, or high turbidity even. So it's not like the trust and losing the trust is not always related to pathogen itself. I think
Totally.
generally, like people do trust we remove all the bugs out of the water, but the water can be a bit funky. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know if I trust it or not. So I think what the industry needs to do is keep doing what we're doing, providing multi-barrier approach, having multi-barrier approach to managing water quality, have right regulation reviews, have right infrastructure in place, but also, again, being able to manage non-pathogen related risk as well. And I think it's again like something interesting where we definitely prioritize acute risk like pathogen toxic elements
Of course.
over aesthetics, but aesthetics have a huge impact on people trust in actually water that is safe to drink. So
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point there. And it was not meant to be a very direct question. I know that. But in some of the other episodes that I've had, we touch on kind of that relationship with
Mm.
community and like touching on a lot more of what we do and people understanding that, yeah, sometimes water might be, the turbidity might be high. And look, I've been in those situations as well, especially like in more
um,
regional bases and also like in other countries. But knowing that health wise it should be safe, then that is a really
mhm.
good thing, of course, that we have shielded our systems around that. So yeah. Julia, I was curious like how, because you mentioned a little bit outbreaks and things that have happened, and it doesn't have to be like pathogen related, but how have learnings from these past events have helped us strengthen current water treatment and monitoring practices that we have?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, like any major incidents always have debrief and investigations and debrief later on lessons learned. And it's common not just for Australia, but for like major cases around the world. So like again, like that's one of the advantages and the reason why I'm staying in touch with AWA and international water associations and just being part of a broader water quality community, like so we can learn from each other, see what's happening and what could have caused different incidents. So I think with crypto in particular, there's a number of quite well-known incidents that happen around the world, and that cause outbreaks. And sometimes it might affect like 10 people, sometimes it's 1,000 people. I think the biggest one is an order of magnitude of 100,000 people, which is quite sad and distressing. But I think like what we learned from that, there's so many things there. It's right to pick. Like I think if I can give you an example, for example, like they have quite significant consequences sometimes. One of the most well-known crypto incidents in Australia actually happened in Sydney in 1998, and
Yep.
it wasn't linked to the actual physical like outbreak of Cryptosporidium. It was linked more to changes in the method of detection. But the consequence of that was significant. So it's actually so it caused the then water board to be split in Sydney Catchment Authority and Sydney Water. So it's resulted in big structural changes in
Changes.
big water supply. So now we have a source water looked after a separate organization in comparison to the treated water. So there's a bit more control over the processes that are in place. So the improvements can be procedural or like organizational, for example, like on the level of structure, like organization structure, for example. There are the example, like I wanted to mention, again, it's from Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. It's actually a good document. The guidelines are quite good. I would recommend reading.
I'll put them in the show notes. You never know. Someone might go and have a look.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so sometimes there's kind of a smaller scale events that might cause a lot of issues down the track. So it was an example from Canada where the treatment plant didn't perform well. Part of infrastructure was under maintenance, and when it was restarted, it's kind of picked up a lot of sludge from the treatment plant that
Yep.
resulted in the crypto pollution in treated water. And so the results of that incident, in comparison to the first one, was improvements in recommendation around operational monitoring and control. So how we actually set up monitoring at the filtration step. How do we shut down the plant on exceedances? What the control points are, like what's operational control points are? How do we manage the filtration itself? So different scales, different incidents result in different
In
improvements. But
different, yeah.
again, as industry, we always learn from not just research, but from incidents itself as well.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking as you were explaining it, I was thinking of a much more dramatic case, I have to say. When there are like plane accidents and crashes and things
Mhm.
like that, people do investigations all the time and then they change how the planes are designed, the planes are operated. And then it's the same kind of parallel situation, but probably, of course, not as dramatic in certain cases, of course, because this is very important as well. And it's interesting that when I was coming into this conversation, I was thinking more as an engineer that I am, more on the
Mm.
technology, and I'm not a process engineer, but I am working a little bit in treatment at the moment and learning
Mhm.
from that. But there's so many other things that are involved into tackling these risks, as you say, in the operation side and even how water is governed and which organization is responsible of that. So that's really fascinating that I mean, we have learned, of course, from other parts of the world in this sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely, like I think with water quality management and water quality risk, when we do water quality risk assessment, we always think, can we eliminate the risk? So it starts with the source water, and I can't stress enough, like a source water protection where it's possible. For example, like having a livestock access close to the offtake. Can it be fenced off? And it would definitely significantly reduce the crypto risk. Just to like diverting cows to another source of water where they can drink, but don't interfere with
With the source
the
of water
water
that will be
that
used,
is
yeah.
used for drinking water supply. So things like that. So there's always like space for improvement. Even sometimes, like we think, as an engineer, I like engineering solutions, but there's some processes and procedures and community engagement. It's very important part of water quality management.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's great example. And I did have Annette Davidson
Mm.
earlier this year, and we were talking about risk, and I asked her like, can we just get to risk zero? And she's like, well, if you have the money for it, but no, not even. So because it's not possible. So it's a matter of like, what is the level of risk that we are prepared to accept, and we shield ourselves for that. Julia, I was curious, coming back a little bit on the technology side and kind of the technical,
Mhm.
are there any recent innovations? We did talk about like UV and other member filtration, but is there any other stuff that you have seen that has or could potentially be a game changer in tackling this kind of crypto management?
I think again, like water industry is constantly evolving but quite conservative. So when we talk about game changers, it's a slow burning process. So because again, like any new technology we adopt for water treatment, we need to be like 200% sure it works. And there are no byproducts or no downside of what we do. So I might just mention two interesting things that are happening at the moment. So one in UV space, actually LED-based UV systems are quite interesting. So I was lucky to attend DBP's and disinfection conference in Spain last year, and there was a really good keynote from one of the US professors. I can give you a name later on, so we can reference them.
We can reference him there.
Yeah, so it's around that because LED light you can be quite selective with the wavelengths of LED lamps. So
Oh,
what, what research found is that it can actually be quite selective with the pathogen removal. So if you know what kind of pathogens are present in the water, it can be selective in wavelengths to remove a particular microorganisms.
Yeah.
For example, I thought it was quite interesting because usually with like UV 254 lamps, like it's quite a fixed spectrum. So there's definitely like different modifications and different systems, but LED might bring some advantages there. The other development I'm aware of is how we monitor crypto as well. So I know, again, like giving some local examples. So Sydney Water Labs are working on a different method of detection of crypto and monitoring for crypto using FilterMax cartridges. So it's an interesting approach. So because like monitoring for pathogen itself is quite labor consuming and
Yeah.
physically like can be intense process. Like you have to collect like 100 liters of water sample that then needs to be taken to the lab, brought to the lab, filtered for, and then you kind of go through the process of analysis. So it is actually like has some OHS issues associated with that.
Issues,
So
yeah.
having like on-site filtration, smaller cartridge units that can filter a similar amount of water and provide reliable results would be quite good. So yeah, so hoping that trials will go well and it's something interesting to look forward to.
Yeah, of course. And then, again, great that is not only kind of how to treat them, but also how to monitor them and know when you're going to be needing to kind of maybe change some of the stuff or
Yeah.
improve your treatment in case that you find that. No, that's great.
Yeah, it's not only hard to monitor, it's also expensive to monitor for. So again, like that's why AWG wouldn't like always recommend to monitor crypto for all the systems. So what we do assessment of potential sources of crypto in the source water. And if it's present, then yes, you might want to
Then you
do
go on
some
to it.
monitoring, but like we try to eliminate the risk at first instance.
Yeah. No, it's a good solution as well. This episode is proudly supported by the Chris Davies AM Fellowship, an initiative of the Australian Water Association. His legacy lives on through this fellowship, empowering efforts to keep his passion for innovation and community impact alive. We're honored to have the support of this fellowship this season too, as we continue to share stories that connect us all to water. Now, back to the episode. Yulia, how would you explain your work? You have a friend that knows nothing about the water sector. How do you explain your work to them?
That's a hard question, Jess. But I
I
think
love it.
I think my answer would be if you can come home, open your tap, and drink water and don't think about it, I do my job well. So whatever I
Great.
do is magic that happens behind it.
It is. It is. I truly believe sometimes it's magic, and that's what we do here. Try to show who are behind the magic and what are we doing about it. So I like that explanation.
Oh, there's a very big industry. It's not just me for sure. But yeah, like it's many specialists, operators, planners,
Yeah,
developer, like so many people contribute to
that's right.
just the simple fact that we're lucky enough to drink water from the tap.
Yeah, it's a privilege, really. And what would be your message to young water professionals who might be listening to you right now?
I thought I'll quote a person I really admire. I was lucky enough to meet Lisa Blair. She is an
Yeah.
Australian sailor and she broke a few world records sailing solo around Antarctica.
Oh,
And
wow.
before her was only two males who could finish the solo trip around Antarctica. It's quite challenging. So I met her in a boat show, and I asked her to sign her book, and she said what she wrote was, "Just do it. The world is changed by doers," and
Yeah, wow.
that's the message I would like to pass on.
Oh, that's lovely. I think it is. And it turns like yeah, it's aligned a lot with some of the things that we have heard here. So yeah, just do it. We are here. We have a lot of challenges. So we just have to tackle them and go for it.
Yeah.
And to finish off, Julia, why do you work in the water sector?
I think because of people, first of all, people like, yourself and all my other colleagues and friends I met in water industry. I think people who work in water are very passionate and really love what they do, really caring about, environment and public health and really want to do our best every day. So I think people, first of all, and also
Yeah.
technical challenges as well. I like that.
There's a part of you that really lies to the problem solving, but mainly people. That's right. I mean, you could be doing this in many other industries that use treatment technologies and like I don't know what your
Mm.
background is, but whatever it is. Yeah, you decided to stay here for the people. And as you say before, the magic that happens when you're working in this sector and we're able to provide an essential service. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Julia, for joining us today. This was an amazing conversation. I learned so much where I thought it was going to be more like treatment and kind of more technology sided, and that have been a much broader but very, very interesting conversation. So thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Pleasure.
That's all for today on our Water Connection. Thank you for listening and being part of this community. As you already know, if you have any feedback or you want to share anything that you learned from Julia today, you can click on the send a message link in the description and leave us a message and we will read it here for you. If you got any feedback on ideas or new topics, also send us my way. We would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform and social media for any updates, highlights, and just to stay connected. Keep your curiosity flowing, and I'll see you next time.